Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best leaders in the world to help you scale your SaaS business from 2 million ARR to 100 million ARR. Today, we have a very special episode with Daniel Watkins, the VP of Sales at Qualtrics. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Heard a lot of great things and a big fan of the podcast.
Thank you very much. And just for our audience, we already covered in the past the journey from 100 million to 1B. We had the Chief Product Officer of Box also on that. So this is the second interview where not only we will be sharing the lessons from 2 million to 100 million, but also some of the lessons to go to the journey to 1B, where Qualtrics is at the moment. But ready to go, and it would be amazing to get to know more about you, Dan, and how did you end joining Qualtrics, and how has been your career so far until now?
Yeah, it's been a journey. So I started with Qualtrics back in 2007 in the basement as employee number 15. Before that, I'd been working in an outsourced sales organization where I was managing the leaders. Companies would outsource their sales to us. We would go and handle that revenue and go and work through that. Qualtrics offered me the opportunity to come and start corporate sales for them. And by corporate, I mean anything non-academic. So government, corporate, and all over the world. Started with that. We had a dream to go help companies make better data-driven decisions. And that ended up becoming experience management, where we go help organizations manage the most important experiences for their customers, their employees, their brand, and their product. And so it's been an incredible journey. Went from starting as the first corporate sales rep, leading a team, to leading sales globally. And now I've got an organization of a little over 500 in sales across the world.
This is quite amazing, and we were discussing before the podcast started how much you travel nowadays to Asia, Latam, Europe, and so far it's quite a hectic schedule. I imagine that you needed some time to adapt to that schedule, right?
Oh yeah, it's when me and my wife got married, actually literally just 2 months after I started at Qualtrics, we made a deal. We were going to put everything into this company, and that meant that whatever sacrifices were necessary to make the company succeed, we wanted to go do that because we knew it could be something special. And people ask me all the time, "So Dan, where are you from?" And or where do you live? The most accurate answer would be in a hotel room, because I could be in Sao Paulo, or I could be in Buenos Aires, or I could be in Argentina. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Anywhere in Latin America, we have offices all over Asia, offices all over Europe, and throughout the United States. And so I spend a lot of time with my teams making sure that there's not just, we only have our headquarters, which would be a co-headquarters in Seattle and Provo, but rather every office has executives that are caring deeply that they succeed.
That's amazing. And give us some context about the stage where Qualtrics is in. So in terms of revenues, in terms of ad count, even speed of growth, so people can relate to the kind of challenges that you are facing now as well.
Yeah, so we have a little over 3,000 employees worldwide, 25 offices throughout the world. A little more than 11,000 of the top brands use Qualtrics. 99 of the top 100 U.S. business schools train all their MBAs on Qualtrics and use the product. And then it relates to revenue. What we just fought, so I can share the stuff that gets out to analysts. Right. And so we just did 172 million in Q4 last quarter, and that was announced during our earnings call. 75% of the Fortune 100 companies use us, and our aspirations for this year to go get over that $1 billion mark.
That's quite amazing, and you are invited to come to the podcast again because we are having a special edition on corporate scale, how to get from 1B to 1-3. 1-3, no company in the world has ever achieved 1-3 in revenues. 1-3 valuation, yes, I think Apple and Microsoft both have achieved, not sure if any more, and the largest company in revenues nowadays is Walmart with $500 billion plus in the number one position. I think that's Apple and Amazon are around almost getting to 300 million. So if we just go to tech, 300B, of course, 300B, which is still another way to go to the $500 billion revenue threshold. So we are really becoming, having the best of the best on the Scaleup journey from 1 to million ARR to 100 million, 1B, and 1-3, it will come the day.
Let's
awesome. Let's do it. I love this. I love the spirit. So, someone who puts so much and is so committed. That's the right answer. So we always cover three critical ingredients in the show to scale. Number one is radical focus. Number two is a world-class leadership team, and number three, a contrarian culture of execution. So getting from 2 to 100 million, there is a popular rule called the triple three times double. Triple two times, double three times, from Neeraj Agrawal, one of the general partners of Battery Ventures based in Boston. So he sees that some of the best companies in the world are able to go from 2 to 6 and then 6 to 18 million, and then double three times, which goes from 18 million to 36, 36 to 72, and 72 to 100 million plus 244 million. So it's a very interesting story, and you can share a little bit more there than that you were planning the IPO at a much larger revenue threshold, around 300 million, and you were planning IPO, and we all know what happened then. But if you can just tell the story to our listeners, it would be amazing.
Yeah, so I think Qualtrics, something that we've done as an experienced company, we pay a lot of attention to what our employees are saying. And we grew, I would say, at the right speed. And if you go look at it, we've got a real possibility of being the fastest SaaS company out there to cross the $1 billion in revenue mark. But we didn't do those metrics that you talked about. We weren't 3xing in revenue and then doubling every single year. Instead, what we did is we paid attention to what could the team handle. Was it the right decision to go and promote people from within, hire from the outside? But we always grew at what we knew was right for the business and stretching us to the maximum without breaking our backs. And so what that ended up leading to is a really, really loyal employee base. If you go look at it, the 15 people that I started with in the basement, I think 10 of them are still here. And even those that aren't here, you wouldn't hear them saying negative things about Qualtrics. They'd still be cheering in the background. They probably own SAP shares now. And so as we went into 2018, I spent a lot of time with Ryan talking about what was going to be best, what was going to be the way that we could really bring XM to the world. Because it wasn't about going public. It was about what is the next point of leverage that we can get to help more organizations manage each of those core 4 experiences: brand, product, employee, and customer. And we talked a lot about going public seemed the right way. It was going to get a lot of publicity. People were going to be shocked at how strong our numbers were, that we were cash flow positive since inception. Incredible. And we thought that was going to be the way to do it. But we started talking about, there were a couple really special companies out there, SAP being one of them, with over 400,000 organizations using one of SAP products line globally. There was an opportunity to go and impact the world at scale. There's lots of great companies like Salesforce or Google or others that are really, really strong enterprise-wide in the US. But then they struggle in selling enterprise. Google's strong everywhere, but selling enterprise solutions, there's not many that do great globally. SAP does better outside of the US than in the US. And so there was this opportunity to go and take unbelievable markets like China, India, Korea, or what we've been able to do in Latin America just over this last year. Now that we've been working together, it's been great. And so when Ryan was talking to Dan, like, this is what I'm thinking about going to do. I was like, let's do it. They said it's an incredible company. Top-rated CEO at the time on Glassdoor, great employee culture, and this is an opportunity to go do what our vision always was.
And Brian Smith is just the founder and CEO of Qualtrics, correct?
Yes,
just
exactly, yeah.
Perfect.
And he's been CEO from the beginning, so he's been here even longer than me. So I've been here 13 years. He's 17 now.
Wow, that's a very long journey, almost 2 decades. And very close to 1B, which is quite amazing in such a short period of time. And if 100 million, it's already such a huge milestone. And if we look to the numbers, under 0.04% are able to get 200 million. So 1B and public companies, it's only 2,000 companies worldwide, which shows how difficult what we are trying to achieve. It's all about. I always like to share stats, because usually people talk about those numbers and we forget how difficult and how outlier this is. And don't get frustrated if it is not your case when you are listening at home or commuting. And starting with radical focus, of course, every stage of the company, you need to achieve different milestones to get to the to have the opportunity to get to the next stage. So from 5 to 10 million, it's all about building a growth machine. From 10 to 20, it might be about opening verticals or opening new geos. From 20 to 50, it's another thing. From 50 to 100, 100 to the 300, 300 to 500, and now 500 to 1B, it's all different milestones you need to achieve and need to be completely focused. So how do you drive focus across your team and the different stages of growth of Qualtrics?
Yeah, so there's a system that we use, and we certainly didn't start it. I think it actually started either at Intel or Intuit, then went to Google, and now it's used to go to a lot of tech companies, the OKR system, which is basically what is the big company objective, and then what are the key results that you're going to measure. And so something that we've been very judicious at Qualtrics is following this pattern. I'm going to do X, there's the objective, as measured by Y, by Z date. And then what you have to do to assess if you actually wrote that OKR well, could anybody other than you assess if you completed it? And so, like, for example, a really bad OKR would be, I'm going to read a book. Okay, so like, what kind of book? Does that actually get to the business need that we need? By when? I'm going to read one of my favorite books, Death by Meetings by Patrick Lencioni, by end of quarter 1, 2020. And I'm going to measure that by actually meeting with my manager, CEO, to go over what I learned. And that's going to indicate if I had success. And so that's that OKR system, and sticking to that, it's been part of our DNA from the very, very early days, has made it to where we can go and focus. One of the OKRs, we wanted every major business school in the United States using Qualtrics. If the top research on business funded by the federal government and private institutions that then go to universities all gets done on Qualtrics, there's going to be the best research running on us. Then those MBAs, PhDs, we're going to go off into corporate world or into government and say, hey, we want to use Qualtrics here too. That was an OKR. We are going to not stop. We're not going to distract our academic team until every major business school in the United States is using Qualtrics. And so that'd be an example of kind of maniacal focus that we focused on in the beginning. When we look at metrics that we focus on in sales, we're really, really judicious about defining what is hard work. And it's not hours in the office. Some of our employees might be in the office 4 hours a day, and they get so much more done because of how we measure it than those that are in there 14 hours a day that got hardly anything done. And so being really, really clear about what are the measures that we use that define hard work, what are the measures that we use that define the outcomes. In sales, it's revenue, and then what are the skills that we're going to go train them on. So I don't know if you're looking for more, but the OKR system, and being really,
Absolutely.
really judicious on it, that every employee at every level has those OKRs.
Absolutely. And we can do a quick jump, as we were talking about OKRs, to the third ingredient to scale, which is this culture of execution, which is all related with values, but also with the rhythm and the cadence of accountability, communication, transparency, all those dailies, weeklies, monthlies, quarterlies, annuals, one-on-ones, town halls. So what are some of the rhythms that helped you to not only drive that focus, but also to assure that we are progressing into that direction?
Yeah. So I and Qualtrics in general are big believers in less is more. So less meetings, but make them impactful. And so I'm going to quote just again, Death by Meetings by Patrick Lencioni. He recommends 5 meetings that are critical to a business. This is how I run my organization. And so we have a weekly tactical, and in the weekly tactical meeting, each attendee brings what are the top topics that they need to go over, things that they're going to be accomplishing that week, things that they need to get unstuck. But ideally, that takes kind of less than 10 minutes or so per person. You go around the room and you address them. It gets everybody in sync for what's going to get happening that week. If a big debate ensues, something that we need to go and address, that then goes to the monthly strategic meeting. The monthly strategic meeting, we don't put a limit on the time. They usually are about a half day. And we bring up all of the topics that need to be debated. And somebody needs to come, whoever's bringing the topic up, needs to come with a very well thought through point of view and recommended action to take. We then debate it, we make the decision, and we move on. Then we have the quarterly offsite where we make sure that we're aligned with our annual objectives and what are our quarterly execution points that we're going to go get done. There's another meeting that the book recommends that I don't use, which is the daily huddle, which is a 5-minute meeting that you do every morning to start the day off. But those are execution type meetings that are focused on tactical, strategic, and then annual alignment. Then in addition to that, we do a couple other things as for the company. One is every single week, we have an all hands meeting. And so everybody, all 3,000 employees, now it's recorded if it's on time zone. So if it's on the European time zone, then our Asian groups will be able to watch it, the recording. If it's on the Asian groups time zone, then our European groups will be able to go and watch the recording. But that's also an all hands meeting where we give big product updates. We announce major initiatives such as what are our big company-wide OKRs that people can go and attach up to, so they know what are the big bets that we're working on. If we do a new thing for Five for the Fight, which is our fight to go and eradicate cancer. And so if there's big milestones that we hit on that, those types of things happen each week.
Got it.
And that's the cadence.
Sounds quite amazing. And this is an extra layer of complexity. We see now the trend of a lot of companies becoming remote. But in your case, I assume it's a distributed team, not a remote team that you have across the world. But we see even within the same country in the US with different offices and different time zones, this can be complex to keep everyone on the same page when we add Europe or Asia or Latam, also with different cultures and different ways of behaving. This can become chaotic and execution can suffer a lot. So what are some of the tips to keep all those teams in the same page when you have a distributed teams?
Yeah, so tips would be, one, make sure to go and have the meetings not just over the phone. If they're conference calls, you miss out on the face-to-face. Like even you and me, we're recording this podcast, we can see each other. It adds a different element. It feels like you're in the same building. And so that's something that a lot of people miss out on. They do their one-on-ones over the phone when they're international instead of Zoom. Even if you're walking somewhere, just have the Zoom on and be looking at your phone. I think that's really, really important. For the strategic meetings, if the budget can afford, fly everybody in. Even if it's just for a one-day meeting, flying everybody in allows everybody to engage at a different level. There'll be a slight bit of jet lag, so make sure you have the right amount of coffee in the room, energy drinks or whatever it is to get going. But those personal touches are really important. Same thing for the quarterly offsite. I fly everybody in, no matter where they are in the world, for my quarterly offsite, where we'll go through the most important things that we're going to go get done and ensuring that we're aligning. We did an executive brief with Stanford executive courses, the Qualtrics leadership team did. And one of the things that they emphasized is if you're going to have distributed groups, the best advice would be have everybody Zoom in instead of having some in a conference room and some Zoomed in. I'm not the best at yet following that, but that was advice that they gave. That's
a very good one. Absolutely. And I've seen horrible things in a lot of companies that I've worked with that you see people joining from other offices and they can't listen what we are saying. We can't listen what they are saying. So it's really an awful experience and it doesn't help with communication. So I think that's a great tip. Just use everyone on Zoom and things will get much easier. Good point. And coming back to the second ingredient to scale, which is a world-class leadership team across, I would add across all layers of the organization. And typically we discuss from 2 to 100 million, we'll have 7 different companies. And from 100 million or from 2 million to 1B, which is your case, you'll have maybe 15 or 20 companies across those stages. So which means that you need 20 different CEOs, 20 different leadership teams, 20 different middle management teams, and 20 different regional teams in your case, 20 different vertical teams, and also 20 different versions of individual contributors. And in this case, this can be very, very difficult and very challenging to ensure that you have the right people on the right seats in every stage of growth of the company. What is your experience with such dramatic change?
Yeah, so I think it's really, really important. One is that every organization is doing employee engagement research. They're studying their own employees. I've used the Qualtrics product since I started. Even when we were only 15 employees, I was using it every month to get feedback. When you get that feedback, you're asking questions like, how comfortable are you in the skills that you're supposed to have? How fast is your career advancing relative to what you want it to go and do? And then what you go and you look at is there's a rule that I use with my organizations is I only hire from the outside if I am 100% confident I don't have somebody that within 18 months I could train to go and do that job. And the reason why is because people get really, really bothered in hyper-scaling companies or even just somewhat fast-growing companies when they don't get their shot. They don't get their opportunity to prove that they can take on more. And what happens is a lot of organizations, they hire tired leaders that don't really want to develop their people. They just expect their people to already know it. And you miss out on one of the best parts of the employee journey, which is growing together. And so my advice would be that as you're hiring your leadership team, think about, do you have somebody that could do that job in 18 months? And as a leader, are you willing to invest in them for that next 18 months, limp along together, get them there? That loyalty you'll create in the company, that employee experience ends up changing the entire culture of the business. Now, there's some opportunities where you can't do that. So for example, when we went and opened up our European offices, we didn't have somebody that we could just go and do it because we needed our first employees that were in Europe. So what we did is we hired a leader that was scrappy enough to be a frontline, meaning they're managing individual contributors, but executive enough that as the business scaled, they were going to be able to manage individual contributors, manage leaders, manage directors, because that's how much experience they had. Those are rare people to find. The individual that I'm talking about, Dermot Costello, one of the best human beings I've ever worked with. And so we hired that leader knowing we were going to scale with him. And so anyway, I don't know if that's exactly what you were looking for, but when I think about scaling and leadership, those are the rules that I use.
This is a very good point and very counterintuitive. There are a lot of conferences where we discuss that sometimes the people that help you to get to 1 million or to 5 million or 10 million or 20 million might not have the skills to get to the next stage, or what got you here will not get you there. And the mindset shift, and that's why one of the challenges, always the bottleneck starts at the top, the CEO. There is a very interesting article by Nick Mehta in December of 2019 that he said, the CEO of Gainsight, which is Nick Mehta, was fired. And we are now writing down the job description for the CEO in 2020. And I'm now applying again for that role and seeing if I'm the right person to lead the organization. I applied and fortunately they accepted me as the CEO again back. And this is a very good way that maybe we should all apply to our own roles in different stages of growth. And something that sometimes happen in the organizations and that we discuss a lot is you need to be grateful for someone who helped you to get here. If it was not the job of that person and that team, you would not have the opportunity to play the next stage of growth or even to be at 1B, almost getting to 1B now. So, but you needed to have someone who helped to starting up with 1 million or with 100 million or getting ready to IPO and then getting acquired. But, and this is the point. And it takes a lot of courage to tell to somebody who offered all their time, all their energy, all their sweat to you and say, maybe we need a different person to the next stage. So I like a lot the counterintuitive approach that you have to this exercise, which is how do you give the opportunity? How do we train people to be ready to apply to the next role, which can be the same in the next company? So what do you think about that trade-off, when to invest and when to change, and also having the courage to not hurt the company?
Yeah, so I think if the company does a really good job at articulating where we're going, so here's our 1-year plan, 2-year plan, 5-year plan, and challenges every employee to understand the person that's going to be responsible, let's say our COO, when we're at this scale, this is what it's going to look like. Current COO now has the opportunity to go think, are they going to go get there? So as a leader, if you go and define that, you're in a really good spot. I'll tell a personal story here. This is back in 2012. Sales organization was about 170 people. We were doing, I think it was something like 50 million a year in revenue. And I applied the rules that I was using. Could I be the right guy in the next 18 months to still lead this global sales force? And the answer was no. We were hitting our quotas, so it wasn't that we were missing. But I realized in order to go hire managing directors in other geos, I'd never done that. Hiring a field sales organization, I'd never done that. Our CEO had never done that. And so there wasn't anybody that could teach me. And so I remember I went to Ryan. I was like, Ryan, I need a mentor, someone who's done this, because I'm not going to be there in the next 2 years. This is a 3, 4, or 5 year journey for me to go learn these things. He's like, Dan, if you want a boss, go hire him. And it was a really cool experience to be able to go and pick who was going to be the one to go and teach me and my whole team what we needed to go learn to go and scale. And that's exactly what played out. John D'Agostino comes in, mentored us all up, taught us how to think about bigger deals, taught us how to think about more complex customers, taught us how to think globally, taught us how to think about hiring more senior individuals. We have a great exit. He retires, and we're all set up to go run. But you have to go and apply this to yourself. It's kind of a sad story when you have to go tell your employee they're not ready. As a leader, if you're doing a good job at teaching them what the future is going to look like, they'll come to you and say they're not ready. And they're looking for that next manager to go help them over the next few years.
I love that story, and such a radical candor to share this experience with our listeners. I really appreciate that, and well done, Daniel. There is something very interesting also on your LinkedIn profile that I think it's one of the key skills of world-class leaders, and again of this second ingredient. And you have there 3 core elements that help you to go to the next stage, which is recruit, retain, and train. And so these are some muscles, and we all know that recruiting people is very, very difficult, and we all make a lot of mistakes until we finally get it right. Retaining, it's also another different job about leading in the right way, working on culture, etc. And what you were just giving the example before, which is preparing someone to be ready to the next stage of growth, training that person and giving visibility and maniacal, as you said, focus that I prefer even better than radical. So how do you train those skills, and how do you develop those skills that are so critical to scale?
Yeah, so one thing that I found really important is if something matters, you have to find the way to measure it. So that when I talk to my leaders about what their career path is going to look like, is you need to be able to, it's not just recruit, you need to be able to recruit and inspire the very best in the world to want to come and work for you. And so if you go look at that, there's lots of ways of thinking. The best in the world means you're going to have a diverse team. It means you're going to have a high performing team. It also means you're going to need to get out there yourself, because the best in the world aren't often looking for jobs.
Right.
But they are looking for something that they can run towards. And so we measure how many people each leader personally recruits. We measure the people that they bring into the interview process. What % of them make it through our very rigorous interview process? So are they aligned with recruiting the best in the world, or are they just bringing in kind of cannon fodder to make it look like they're recruiting? Then you go to retention. So retaining is not just keeping people, but that there's this very special culture. There's something special about working for you as a leader, not just Qualtrics, not just the experience management company that does everything to try to manage all these experiences, but you as a leader. There's something special about working in your organization. And we measure that through employee engagement, employee attrition, % of individuals that are high performers in your organization relative to targets. And so that's how we measure retention. And then training is, so we measure every core skill, and so it's relatively easy for jobs of scale. So customer support, customer success, sales, operations, those types of roles where you have lots of them, you go and define what success looks like. Then you go look at what are their skills. And so we measure all of the skills that those individuals are supposed to have, and how are they progressing from where they were to where they should be. And then what we do is, then last but not least, we also have execution. I actually don't publish that on my LinkedIn page, but I probably should. The 4th ingredient is execution, purely executing against the big bets that are assigned to you. And those are, we score everybody in a percentile. Are you in the top 5% of leaders?
Yep. Top
25%, middle 50, bottom 25, bottom 5. Only the top 25% get promoted. And so we've designed a really rigorous system to ensure those 4 things actually happen.
This makes me think of the Jack Welch system at GE some years ago, about also being completely fanatic about promoting the top performers and letting go the bottom performance of the organization, which sometimes I think sometimes we tend again not to double down on the strengths, but try to fix our weaknesses and not focus on our stars and our A players, but focus on the B and C players to help them to become A players instead of leveraging the ones who are already doing a great job, and we forget to tell them thank you and how amazing they are doing, right?
100%. Yeah, so taking the opportunity to thank those top performers and then focusing on the bottom, I think, is also important. We have lots of systems in place to go and help. And so our goal is that when somebody's a bottom performer, 75% of them end up becoming performers. And we measure that. We track that. We pay attention.
This is an amazing ratio. Congratulations.
And so not everybody does it, but those are our aspirations. And it's the leaders that are able to do that truly create that special culture. When you don't give up on somebody as a leader and you're with them when they're having the worst year of their life, they'll remember that when they're having the best year of their life. And they're going to want to keep working with you to go build something special.
This is amazing. It's kind of Navy SEALs, right? It's brothers and sisters, as Simon Sinek would say. It's not just coworkers, it's brothers and sisters. That's a very different culture and way of looking to it. As we have an expert and with such a huge experience, we'd like also to challenge you about what would be some of the ingredients that we might be missing in our recipe or in our principles: the radical focus, world-class leadership, and the contrarian culture of execution. Would you add something to the recipe that we might be missing as you are now almost getting to 1B?
Let's see. And you tell me, hiring the right people is where I end up finding like that third of my first third, recruiting. And are they hiring the right people? Where does that fit in with that, with the four things that you just mentioned? If that's already in there, then it's great.
Yeah, it's the number 2. It's world-class leadership across all layers of the organization. And even the individual contributors needs to be amazing leaders. So it's having the right people on the right seats. Good.
I mean, like that is a really, really comprehensive list.
We tried a lot to summarize some of the main components that we also listen on the show in those 120 episodes so far.
I should have thought more on that before we met. I actually didn't.
This was a surprise. That's amazing. Cool. And we come to our favorite question and the last question of the show, which is, if you would have the opportunity to meet Daniel 13 years ago when he was joining Qualtrics as employee number 15, what advice would you offer to Daniel at that time?
So there's two pieces of advice that have stuck out as I've got this question over the years. One of them is, as quickly as is humanly possible, get rid of the mindset that you just need somebody in chair doing the job. Somebody will not work out. It has to be somebody who wants the job, that you're committed to helping become the best they could possibly be, and that has that capacity to do it. Too often early in my career, I would make this, I just need someone to go do that. And so I would lower my standards for hiring. And then that would you end up managing the person out. And then you have to go hire somebody different. That could cost you 18 months to 2 years of lost productivity because you chose to try to take the short route. And so that would be one. Do not ever bend on your hiring bar and your hiring standards. The second one that I would mention, and this is going to sound a little more emotional than I normally am, but I'll never forget this day. I was in Las Vegas. I had just sent out another employee engagement survey to my team. This is about, how long ago? Maybe 10 years ago. And I remember there were 70 pieces of feedback on things that I needed to improve on. And I remember, I called up my dad, who was a vice president of sales himself. And I remember actually literally crying. It's like, Dad, I'm never, ever going to live up to these people's expectations. I'm just like 70 things I need to go get better at. And he gave me some advice that has always stuck with me that I wish it hadn't taken me that long even to learn, which was, Dan, that means there's 70 people in your business that trust you with what they're really feeling and believe in you that you can go get better. Most leaders will never get that in their entire career. So when you get so the advice I'd give myself is, Dan, when someone hits you square between the eyes on something you need to improve, take that as the best compliment they could possibly give you, because they trust and respect you enough to trust you with how they're really feeling. And that took me too long to learn.
That is amazing. What a great way of closing the show. Daniel, congratulations for what you've been doing so far with your team. And thanks so much for sharing your time with us to share your experience.
Oh, the pleasure's mine. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
And to our community, thanks for being on that side. We keep bringing you the best of the best so you can leverage their lessons and avoid their mistakes. See you soon and keep scaling.